Hello and welcome. I'm Suma Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Exit polls claim Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party, the LDP, led by Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi, is set to regain a majority in the country's lower house. Thailand votes in a national election featuring a three-way contest among major political blocs, with coalition talks likely to follow. Iran describes Oman-mediated indirect talks with the United States as a positive step towards nuclear negotiations, while emphasizing that it's a non-negotiable that talks will remain not on its missile program. According to Chinese state media, 8 people were killed in a blast at a biotechnology factory in central China early Saturday. Officials said rescue operations have ended, the company's legal representative has been taken into police custody, and authorities are now investigating the cause of the incident. India and Malaysia have pledged to deepen their semiconductor partnership as the Indian Ocean neighbors ramp up trade and security links during a visit from Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Malaysia. Trump signs an order warning of new U.S. tariffs on countries that continue to trade with Iran, citing a possible 25% rate. The move comes as U.S.-Iran talks continue in Oman, with Trump restating opposition to Iran's nuclear ambitions. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the U.S. wants the war with Russia to end by June, adding both sides had been invited to the U.S. for talks next week in Miami. Ukraine have confirmed their attendance, but Russia is yet to agree. A white supremacist who killed 51 Muslim worshippers in the 2019 Christchurch mosque attack in New Zealand, Brenton Tarrant, will begin an appeal hearing today. Tarrant, an Australian national convicted of 51 murders, 40 attempted murders and a terrorism charge after live streaming the attacks, was carried out New Zealand's worst massacre in recent history. Now we start with Asia. The Dalai Lama's office has denied any connection with convicted late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. This came as Chinese media reports emerged that linked the Tibetan Buddhist leader to the financier. The U.S. Justice Department recently released a large set of documents in its investigation into Epstein, mentioning the Dalai Lama's name over 150 times. But there has been no evidence of Dalai Lama meeting or interacting with Epstein. Moreover, his office has also clarified that he never met Epstein nor authorized anyone on his behalf to do so. Now, the Dalai Lama's name had previously been mentioned in the context of Epstein's gatherings, including a claim made by journalist Michael Wolff, who speculated in 2022 that the Dalai Lama had been present at Epstein's Manhattan townhouse during one of Epstein's so-called infamous salons or gatherings. Additionally, the Dalai Lama has also faced previous controversy over appearances and payments from other questionable figures, including a 2009 event with Nexim Vim founder Keith Raniere, who later received a 120-year prison sentence. Now for this, we welcome Dr. Andrew Latham. He's a professor of international relations and political theory at Macalester College, joins us live from Minneapolis. Thank you very much, Dr. Latham, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, what are we to make of these latest claims making connections of Dalai Lama, and Dalai Lama, although denying it, and another journalist has also mentioned him earlier. So, how should we filter what is right, what is true, and what is not, although we cannot fully ever know?
Yes, that's right. We can't know for certain. The backstory makes it even more complicated. The Dalai Lama having questionable relations with questionable persons in the past. So that puts it in a slightly different light. Most likely, though, Epstein was reaching out to the Dalai Lama as part of his effort to enhance his own reputation. That's reputation laundering. He tried to associate and affiliate himself with all kinds of high-profile, respectable people in all sorts of walks of life, and the Dalai Lama was certainly that. But the Dalai Lama, too, is insulated by multiple layers of staff. I'm sure that to the extent that Epstein dealt with the Dalai Lama, he dealt with the Dalai Lama's staff, not directly with. So I'm inclined to believe that there was no actual relationship between Epstein and the Dalai Lama. Although we don't know, and there is that somewhat murky backstory about the Dalai Lama having questionable contacts with questionable people in the past.
And also, as we see Dalai Lama's finances, so where or who provides the finances for Dalai Lama right now, if you can share anything, and what other things do we know about his finances?
Well, I don't know very much about them other than he was in the business of raising money, and that's normal and natural. Every organization like his does that. And Epstein was also in the business of raising money for others and for himself. So there was a natural overlap of interests and worlds, as it were. But again, at this point, it doesn't seem as if the Dalai Lama's need for money superseded his allergy in connection with Epstein. Simply didn't want to have anything to do with him. So again, yeah, one could construct a very plausible narrative that the Dalai Lama had these questionable relationships with these questionable people in the past. He needed money. Epstein had money, but I'm not persuaded by that. I still think I'd have to see a lot more evidence that there was an actual financial or other kind of relationship between these two figures than we've seen so far.
And since it's not just Dalai Lama, but many elite, including political elites, have been connected to Jeffrey Epstein. What do you think would be a good path for justice for all these people, or who should conduct these kind of, bringing these people into justice? Because it's not only in US, of course. Some people are in Asia, some people are in Europe, and there's so many connections. So which court should bring these people into justice?
Well, it should be national courts, but it's a very complicated thing because simply to be mentioned in these communications doesn't make you guilty of anything. It simply means that there's been some effort on perhaps Epstein's part to reach out. And so a careful investigation is required in each and every case. Some of this, though, has been weaponized. The Russians accusing the French President Macron of being involved, for example, and the French responding, obviously denying it. This is not just about legal proceedings and bringing perpetrators of vile crimes to justice. This has also been weaponized at the geopolitical level as well, which makes it more complicated. But at the end of the day, there is no international court that can handle this kind of case. This is going to be national legal systems that have to kick in and bring people who committed crimes within their jurisdiction to trial and to justice. And there's also the possibility of extradition. I suppose the Department of Justice in Washington is taking the lead on this, obviously. So it's very complicated, both in terms of getting to know the actual truth, but also then what do you do with the truth? Whose jurisdiction does it fall into? Are they willing to prosecute? And to what extent does it get weaponized in that other information war global battle space between the US and Russia and China and India and other players?
Yes, and last but not least, about Dalai Lama's succession, right? There's disagreements. China says that they have their own person, and then Dalai Lama who has denied it. So do you think that this kind of controversy coming up would affect these decisions also?
I would be very surprised if Beijing didn't seize the opportunity to again weaponize this and say this man and his successors that he's chosen are not fit for a purpose. They're not fit for office. and that we have a viable alternative, and this should be the person that's in charge. And of course, that person would be beholden to Beijing, not a critic, a sometime critic of Beijing, as the Dalai Lama is. So again, this is fuel for that fire. It's ammunition for Beijing to use, and I would be very surprised if they didn't use it.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Dr. Latham, for highlighting that and sharing that insight. Now we move on to Iran and Russia. Iran is keeping Russia and China closely in the loop on its nuclear talks with the United States in Oman. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has said that Tehran continues regular consultations with both Moscow and Beijing, briefing them on every step of the negotiation process. Araghchi has also highlighted the role of regional countries in supporting the talks, saying their participation has been positive. He has said Iran will continue consultations and keep its allies informed as the discussion progresses. The talks in Oman are part of ongoing efforts to resolve the crisis over Iran's nuclear program. While the focus remains on nuclear issues, Iran is making sure its strategic partners, Russia and China, are aware of the developments. Now for this, we welcome back Dr. Andrew Latham. He's joining us live from Minneapolis. Thank you very much, Dr. Latham, for staying with us. Now, Iran has openly said that China and Russia, Iran briefs them. But is Iran expecting anything in return of briefing them on these things?
Not directly, I think. It's about signaling to Moscow and Beijing that they're still aligned with, Iran is still aligned with Russia and China, that it's not going to change teams, as it were, and join Team USA, that it still values the military relationship and the sanctions-busting relationship with Russia, and also the trade relationship with China. It's also signaling to Washington that we have powerful friends. They're in our corner, they will support us, and that it's not the American superpower versus this Iranian regional power, this huge power imbalance. We, Tehran, have friends, Beijing and Moscow, so just be careful how lightly or heavily you tread when you're dealing with us.
Right. Building on that, if this is a signal, does it make any difference to U.S.?
I don't think so. I think the Washington, the Trump administration is well aware that there's this axis of revisionist powers, as the academic literature sometimes portrays them. And Tehran and Moscow and Beijing are part of that axis, and there's no confusion on the part of the foreign policy establishment in the U.S. But it does kind of reinforce and remind that this relationship exists. No, I don't think. I think what the United States, it's already getting much of what it wants. Just to get Iran to the table to talk about nuclear weapons is a big win. To get Iran to talk about it the way they're talking about it in very positive and conciliatory tones is a big win. The sticking point is going to be the ballistic missiles and also Iran's regional role via its proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, etc. Those are going to be bigger sticking points, but it looks as if Trump is getting what he wants. At least at this point, it appears that he's getting what he wants on the nuclear file.
And what do you think is that?
I think it will be a dismantling of enough of the Iranian nuclear infrastructure that the breakout time, the time it takes to go from not having nuclear weapons to actually having nuclear weapons, goes from weeks and months, which is where it is at the moment, to years or decades. So not a complete dismantling of the nuclear infrastructure, which has some peaceful applications, nuclear power plants, etc. But it's the same technology that underlies the peaceful nuclear technology and the militarized, the weapons nuclear technology. It's the same technological underpinnings. And so there's going to have to be an effort, a concession on the part of Tehran that they're going to allow verified, that means international inspectors, to come and make sure that they're dismantling the centrifuges, that they're doing away with the enriched uranium, and et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't mean that they'll never have the ability to develop nuclear weapons in the future, but the breakout time will be extended quite substantially. I think Washington will count that as a big win. Whether it's a sufficiently big win remains to be seen.
Yes, we will be eyeing that. With that, I would like to thank Dr. Andrew Latham for joining us and sharing that insight. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Ukraine. Ukraine's foreign minister has called for an acceleration of peace talks, urging that only U.S. President Donald Trump can bring about an agreement to end the 4-year war with Russia. Andrei Sybiha has stressed the need for both Ukrainian and Russian leaders to meet in person and resolve the most challenging issues remaining in the peace negotiations, particularly land and control over the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. With the U.S. brokered talks making slow progress, Ukraine hopes to build momentum before the U.S. congressional elections in November. Despite a recent prisoner exchange and a new round of talks proposed in Miami, there has been no major breakthrough. Moreover, Ukraine is also pushing for Western security guarantees to deter future Russian aggression once a ceasefire is in place. The U.S. has agreed to provide a security backstop, although no troops will be deployed in Ukraine. Now for this, we welcome Dr. Gilbert Doctorow. He's an Russian affairs expert, joins us live from Brussels. Thank you very much, Dr. Doctorow, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now looking at this, how close are we for a breakthrough, given the timeline that U.S. has given that Ukraine has said that U.S. wants an agreement or ceasefire before June? Do you think that's feasible? Do you think that's realistic?
Well, it's possible. It's not probable, but it is possible. It all depends on what we're considering to be a settlement. Look, the Russians have said they're under time pressure from Mr. Trump to accelerate the negotiations and reach a conclusion faster, perhaps within a June timeline. And it's understandable that President Trump would promote this, because the longer this goes on, the more entrenched are the opposition forces against the peace, namely Britain and the EU-NATO. So they have been serious interference from these outsiders to the negotiations that Mr. Trump would like to remove by hastening conclusion of a deal. If Ukraine would want it now is interesting. It means it suggests that they have less than complete confidence in their European allies, and it suggests that they are aware of just how desperate the situation of their troops on the ground are today in Donetsk Oblast and in the Donbass, how close they are to losing the whole of Donbass. June is a very good date to pick if you want to find a date when the Russians would have conquered the whole of Donbass.
And how do you analyze, current U.S.-Russia relations and U.S.-Ukraine relations?
U.S.-Russia relations are fraught. They are not simple. The Iranian issue, which you were discussing a few minutes ago with an interviewee, bears directly on the U.S.-Russian relationship. I believe that 10 days ago or so, the relationship between U.S. and Russia was at the point of breaking, precisely because the Russians are completely opposed to an American attack on Iran, and Mr. Trump was threatening to do just that. So I believe they're now on a stable, even keel, as we say, and particularly since the meetings that the Iranians had with Witkoff, those not direct but indirect meetings in Oman, were judged to be positive by both sides. So if the Iran crisis is reduced, becomes manageable, then the Russian relations with the United States over the Ukraine war will also become more productive and closer to achieving the goal of a peace.
Right. And how do you analyze President Trump's motivation level right now? Do you think he's as motivated as he was in the winter last year about brokering peace, or do you think his focus is shifting to Iran, is shifting to Board of Peace, is shifting elsewhere, Greenland?
Well, all of these issues are interrelated. So a shift from one foot to the other does not mean that the body has moved. They're all interrelated. The Greenland adventure is an underlying Mr. Trump's determination to control the Western Hemisphere and to show that he's a man of action and not just of words. That's exactly what the Venezuela action was all about. As regards relations with Russia and Iran, I believe that will be claiming victory in the deal with Iran, even if it's not really a victory. Because nobody's talking about the 400 kilograms of nuclear enriched weapons-grade uranium that the Iranians probably still retain. Nonetheless, he will claim a victory, and that bears on his chances for success with the Russians. His main overarching interest is the relationship with the Russians. And it's not because he likes Russians or doesn't like Russians. It's because of his vision of the new world order. BRICS, forget about BRICS. That is not, he's doing his best to destroy BRICS. And what he wants to see as a new world order is one that is based on balance of power and interests, that is spheres of influence. And for him to achieve that, the United States cannot have a global hegemony anymore. It doesn't have the strength, the economic strength to that. So he wants a regional hegemony for the United States, the Western Hemisphere, and he would like to make that manageable and attainable by ceding regional hegemonies to the other world powers, which at a minimum are Russia and China, and probably also include India.
Thank you very much, Dr. Doctorow, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on to Middle East, Russian President Vladimir Putin has expressed his gratitude to UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan for assisting in the detention of a suspected link to an attempted assassination of a senior Russian general, General Vladimir Alexeyev. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has confirmed that Putin thanked the Emirati leader for the cooperation between special services. The two leaders also discussed issues raised during Al Nahyan's recent visit to Moscow. Now we welcome back Dr. Gilbert Doctorow. He's joining us live from Brussels. Thank you very much, Dr. Doctorow, for staying with us. Now, what do you think, what led to, UAE cooperating in this particular individual's arrest, or what do you think, what connection led to this arrest in UAE?
Well, I think that we are just at the beginning of understanding what this plot was all about. We hear that there are 3 individuals, suspects. One of them is now in Ukraine. One of them has been detained in Russia. And then there is the gentleman, 66-year-old Russian national, who has been sent back to Russia on special flight and was received by the FSB yesterday for interrogation. How does the United Arab Emirates fit into this? It's too early to say, but I would like to introduce a supposition. The Ukrainians initially said that they didn't do it. And it could be they're right. The Ukrainians are not the only ones who are involved in acts of terrorism and assassination of Russians. The British, through the MI6, have been working very closely with the Ukrainians, both inside and outside the government, to get their own way in humiliating and weakening Russia. They've been involved in assassinations within Russia, and I don't believe that they can be excluded. The fact that we now have such a global reach, that someone was sent out, was paid for to go to the United Arab Emirates, suggests to me there's more than Ukraine was involved in this plot. And the missing link is probably sitting in London.
That's so interesting. So do you think, what do you think could be the motive of London or MIA being involved in such?
In 2 of the assassination attempts and realized assassinations, the one going back to December of 2024, when the Russian lieutenant general responsible for dealing with chemical warfare was assassinated, that same man was wanted by the MI6 for having exposed the false flag operations of the Brits and the Americans in Syria when they and the white helmets were supposedly saving victims of Bashar Assad's use of chemical weapons. So he had been exposing the misdeeds of the British. The current assassination victim, who was saved, in fact, Alexeyev, he is on the European sanctions list brought by the British, who accused him of supervising the murder or attempted murder of the Skripals in Salisbury. Well, Salisbury happens to be a center of British chemical warfare. So there was always a supposition that the MI6 had tried to remove the Skripals for their own purposes. In any case, the British had a very direct accusation against Alexeyev, and so their desire to see him in an early grave would have a good substantiation behind it.
Thank you for sharing that deep insight with us, Dr. Doctor. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Winter Olympics. Lindsey Vonn's Olympic comeback ended in a heartbreak today at the Milano Cortina 2026 Winter Games. The U.S. alpine skiing legend crashed out of the women's downhill race after clipping the gate, causing a painful fall. The race was halted for over 10 minutes. Meanwhile, Vonn, who was already recovering from a torn ACL in her left knee, was airlifted to Kuruvilla Hospital in Cortina. Regardless of the injury, her Olympic campaign, likely her last, ended in disappointment as the 41-year-old suffered more injuries, including bone bruising and meniscal damage. However, this crash could mark the final chapter in her legendary career. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news and updates from around the world.